Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Advisor with Stacey Chillemi. And today I'm very excited because we have a very special guest today. His name is Matt Hawk, and he has a PhD from Yale. He is an author and a coach, and he focuses on business, and he is excellent when it comes to visionary growth. And he helps a lot of people in the healthcare industry. And today he has such great things to talk about when it comes to visionary growth and business. And he's going to share that with you today. I am so honored to have you on the show today, and I love, you talked to me a little briefly about what you're going to talk about, and I thought it was amazing. So I'm very excited for you to share this with our listeners. And before we begin, can you tell everybody a little about yourself and what you do?
Sure, Stacy. Thank you very much. And it's a privilege to be with you. You've been such an inspiration to so many people. Thank you for
Thank you.
that. Let me tell you my story a little bit first. When I was 8 years old, growing up in Chicago, my favorite thing in the world was the Chicago Blackhawks and their goalie Tony Esposito, and that's who I wanted to be, was Tony Esposito. And when I was 8, I got to play my first season. Actually, it was a half season because I fell very ill. In fact, I was in the hospital for weeks. My distant relatives came to see me. I overheard people talking about exploratory brain surgery when I was asleep, and that was traumatic. But my main feeling coming away from that experience wasn't the trauma, it was the kindness and caring of the nurses and the doctors and the providers who took care of me. I really have a lasting place in my heart for how they took care of me, and I still have it today. I'm so grateful when I go see my dentist, Dr. Terry Wheeler in Torrance, who's fantastic. Every time I go, I'm just so grateful for that care that's available. So my illness was not diagnosed, but I got better. And the next year, I got on a better team. And when I was 9, we won the Illinois State Championships under my coach Ralph and Coach Ed. Between the between the healthcare providers and the coaches, it was just a magical experience for me. So when I got to high school, I did some volunteer work at Bethany Manor, which was a physical therapy facility for brain damaged children here in Los Angeles. And that led to working in high school and physical therapy, and in college. And then eventually, when I was in graduate school, I did radiology transcription.
Mhm.
So after all that, I planned on teaching college, and I did for a while, but I wound up going into business instead. And I did many years working for a company called Care Credit, a division of Synchrony, which
Mhm.
provides patient financing solutions for healthcare providers. And that was fantastic because I had the opportunity to work with hundreds of practices and help them figure out with their teams how they were going to integrate patient financing to make their practices more successful. So, being in sales training for 20 years, which became sales enablement, I did a lot of work for big companies like Google and American Express and Microsoft and Merrill Lynch and Morgan Stanley. But what I really wanted to do at this point in my career was work with small to medium enterprise because they make up 46% of the jobs and 44% of the economic output in this country. And especially given my feelings for healthcare provider, that's where I'm focused today, is helping healthcare practitioners attain freedom and grow their business. But I got a question for you, Stacey. I'm kind of talking a lot here. You probably know Dan Ariely, who's in the psychology of influence. And his story was that as a child, he suffered very serious burns and
Mhm.
he underwent months of health care. And his experience with those practitioners actually drove him into the field that he's in now.
Yes.
So, what I wanted to ask you, I've been dying to ask you, is, how has your own personal journey impacted the way that you see healthcare providers and the way that you coach healthcare providers?
Well, for me, being in the field and having experience with doctors and having my own condition and interacting with many different types of doctors, the doctors who had the biggest impact on me were the doctors who really showed a deep sense of care towards the patient. They really listened to the patient, they understood the patient, and they had also the not only compassion, but they had the will to want to learn more and more and get better at what they did. And you could see it in just the way they took care of the patient and the knowledge that they had and they spoke on a patient's level where, many doctors like to use a lot of medical terminology that goes over most people's heads, but they don't realize that in today's world, the average person speaks on a sixth grade level. And there are many doctors out there that graduated from Yale and they graduated from Oxford and NYU, but they knew how to speak to the patients, and they spoke not only on a patient's level so they would understand and the patient felt like they weren't stupid, but they also showed compassion and care. And I think that made a huge difference. And for me, the doctors that spent the most time with me and the most effort to try to get me to the point where I am today, they were like my security blanket. They were, to this day, I have when I talk about them, I get tears in my eyes because
Yes,
they gave me my second chance of life. And they brought me from one extreme to the next, and I was able to actually live life the way I wanted to. So they gave me my second life.
fantastic. So we share a love for our compassionate caregivers for sure. But let's shift a little bit. In your experience, I'd love to hear what are some of the things that block healthcare practitioners specifically from growth, whether it's personal growth or growing their business.
I think sometimes some doctors get so caught up in because the healthcare system is very screwed up in the United States, and a
Mm.
lot of doctors, struggle financially, even though they're well educated and they might have thriving practices, or they might work in, their practices struggle because there's so many regulations, and it makes it very hard for doctors to really spend a lot of quality time with the patient, to be able to really understand the patient. And some doctors are so frustrated because they are dealing with other problems within their practice that they kind of take it out on the patient. And I've heard that
Mm.
many times. And then you have doctors that have a very cocky personality and they don't communicate well with the patient. And then you have doctors that are really good at what they do, and they, have great relationships with the patient, and they're thriving, and they're doing well, but they're still struggling too because our system has a lot of work. Our healthcare system needs a lot of help. And I think it's also important too. I've seen many doctors, they were amazing doctors, but they had the people in the front that weren't very good at what they did. They didn't communicate well with the patients, or they weren't nice to the patients. And that
Right.
makes a patient just want to leave, even though they like the doctor. So you really have to have a team that is on the same level and really, um, looks at the doctor as a mentor, and and everyone works together as a team with all their goals in line. And with the hospital and the healthcare, you have doctors like they are amazing, some of these doctors, but they are limited now in many states that they can only see a patient up to 15 minutes and then they have to go. Where, back in the day, you could sit with a doctor for 30, 45 minutes and the doctor would take notes and listen and would know you on a one-on-one basis, and would know what your kids' names were and your grandkids' names were, where you can't have that relationship anymore. And that's posing, I think, a lot of, anger and stress. And then you have also a lot of healthcare systems where there is a lot of denials, and people are getting denial care. And so they're not able to get that treatment from those doctors. So there's a lot of things going on in our healthcare system that, in order for doctors to be the best they can be, I think everyone has to get involved and everyone has to try to help each other.
Absolutely. And I sometimes wonder, because doctors are taught that they need to maintain a clinical distance from their patients. But that's very difficult to do. Or if you're an empathetic provider, um, it must be very difficult to be clinical and empathetic at the same time.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And I've seen that, I've met many empathetic doctors, but they do have to have a breaking point where they have to, step back and, and not get too involved, because when they do, it poses a problem. And so they have to know when to draw the line. So they are taught how to draw the line, but it's not always that easy.
Yes, I definitely sympathize with them. I'm thinking about a study that was done on success. It happened to be amongst engineers, but they were asking, what percentage of their success comes from knowledge, what percentage comes from skills, and what percentage comes from interpersonal skills.
Hmm.
And the determination was that only 15% of success comes from skills, technical abilities, and knowledge, and 85% was interpersonal relationships. And, as you know, even people who maybe not be the most outgoing, they might not be a high I if you're a disc fan,
Hmm.
but they can still learn the techniques.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the research shows, for example, that physicians who set an agenda and take time for questions and listen and so forth, they have a much lower incidence of being sued for malpractice.
Right.
But it doesn't, and this is something that I've learned in training many different kinds of people. You don't actually have to feel empathetic. You can use a verbal process that creates an experience of empathy for the person you're visiting with. And guess what, though? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're
Yeah.
probably going to end up feeling empathy on the back end.
Yes.
But you don't have to necessarily bring it to every conversation as long as you know how to lead the conversation.
Right. Exactly. 100%. 100%.
So I'd love to talk about, one of the things we do in coaching is help people align their vision and their values with their actions.
Hmm.
And in my experience, many, probably most people don't really do this in any kind of formal or consistent way, which creates problems
Yeah.
because if the gap between my self-image or my ideal self-image and the reality is too wide, there's pain and there's shame and there's denial there, and I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
Carl Rogers said, the greater the discrepancy between the self-concept and the actual experience, the more rigid the defenses are.
Right.
So I would love to hear your advice. How do you help clients who may have some defensiveness about really exploring that gap between where they are today and where they would like to be in the future?
I think sometimes I have to bring them back to reality, and I do that by taking really to stop labelizing themselves and to start looking within. And so when you take that, you take those labels away from them as a professional, as a doctor, as a husband, as this, as that, and you strip them down to who they are, just them, with no labelization. They have to really think about who they are as a person. And once they figure out who they are as a person, they could start really thinking about what their true core values and what their goals are and their expectations are. Because sometimes their ego takes place and they lose track of who they are. And in this world, we are so materialized and we are always worried about so many different things that we lose track of why we got into this business in the first place, who we are, what made us get into this business, and what our true goals were when we started. And are those goals still the same goals? Are we still wanting to help people because of X, Y, and Z? Are we still looking to do this? And, when it comes to, worrying about making income, a lot of times when you have those core values intact and you have those goals set and you have everything, you have a strategic plan, a lot of times things fall into place. Nothing is ever perfect, but a lot of times things start to fall into place. And then originally you start to see a snowball effect. But you have to start and really think about, where you are today. Sometimes we get lost and we have to go back to where we started and then figure out who we are, what makes us that person, what we have, what our goals are, who and where we really want to be in life. What is our drive?
Thank you so much. And it makes me think about the power of affirmations.
Hmm.
And, it's popularized by Tony Robbins or Lou Tice, but it's also, as you know, it's part of cognitive behavior therapy.
Yeah.
It's not really pop psychology, it's real psychology. And so, as our self-talk ends up determining what we believe about ourselves,
Oh yeah.
which ends up determining the range of actions that we may or may not be willing to entertain, which
Hmm.
then determines our success. And
Yes.
so I'd love to hear a little bit about the power of affirmations and what I think you were just alluding to use a clunky technical term, the reticular activating system, which just means that, if you focus your mind on something, you will see things and hear things that you would not have otherwise seen and heard because you hadn't focused your energy and your attention in that way.
Yes, very true. Very true. And the power affirmation starts when we are young as children. And if you really want to look at the proof, you could look at the environment you grew up with. If you had parents that were positive and gave you a lot of positive feedback and praises, you will grow up to feel positive about yourself and have inner strength. If you had a family that looked at your negative qualities and put you down and said you're not good enough, you're going to grow up not thinking you're good enough, and you're not going to be able, it's going to be very hard for you to excel unless you overcome your obstacles. And the same thing when we get older, if we consistently put positive things in our head and we give ourselves credit for the things in our lives that are going well and that we made those things happen, we will build our self-esteem. We will build our and once we gain that confidence and we realize that we have the capability to be the person that we want to be, whatever dream you put down that road, you will achieve it as long as you keep yourself, consistent, hardworking, and you keep that leadership, those leadership qualities within you, and you keep focusing on those positive things. And you have to remind yourself every day of who you are, what your dream is, and why you are deserving of that dream, and why you have the qualities, what inside you makes you that able to achieve those goals. And the best thing to do, I think, for me personally, is I knocked out all the negative people in my life. And I put all, and sometimes, people are meant to be in our lives for a certain amount of time, and sometimes they journey out. And that when you're looking to elevate your life, you'll see that people start to come when you call out to the energies of the world and you call out to the spiritual world and you say, I want to be da 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 da. All of a sudden you start see people start to dive into your life and you start meeting people with the same expectations or higher expectations, and you start to bond with other people, and those energies, those forces together are just a powerful source of ways to succeed and to really become the person you want to be.
Absolutely. And, I wish I could say that I've been doing this consistently my whole life. I really haven't. There have been times when I did, times when I didn't. Of course, now it's a much more consistent part of my life. And, I don't know if men do this more than women, but there's a skepticism. Maybe it goes back to Stuart Smalley days, if you're old enough to remember the
Hmm.
guy who says, I'm good enough and people like me.
Hmm.
But do you have any advice on overcoming skepticism about this, what is really science?
What is really science?
That is the flow of self-talk and vision to reality. If some people are like, yeah, I don't know, affirmations, yeah, I don't think that's really for me. What would you say to that person?
I think if you tell yourself you're not good, you're not going to be good. If you tell yourself you are good and I have capability to be whatever I want to be, you will achieve those goals. It's a drive, it's a power within yourself. Affirmations are truly existent. It is truly a very powerful source to reach success and to reach your goals in life. And I think, I've seen a lot more genders like men even going towards affirmations. A lot of men that I've spoken to, say, yes, I do it in the morning. I meditate and I say certain things to myself and it helps me. And so I think affirmations is something that's really out there. If our mental capacity, we only use 10% of our brain, and then the other is our subconscious. But when we are using there are so many things that go on in our subconscious. But when you sit down and you meditate and you focus on the positive things in your life and you keep focusing on the positive things, you'll see that a lot of times as you're accomplishing things and you're using affirmations to do it, you're going to start coming to realizations about not only the goals you want to achieve, but life in itself. You are the person that you want to be. you could achieve anything in your life. You could rise above the chaos and overcome any obstacle and make your dreams a reality. It's just taking the time to tap into that inner self, that inner power, and to be able to realize who you are and what you want to be. And you have to keep reminding yourself. And every time you achieve things, you have to realize that I do have the power. I am powerful. I am great. I am smart. I could do this, and you psych yourself out, and your mentality gets stronger, and it gets to the point where you feel you're unstoppable in a sense, where in a good way, not a bad way, that you are going to do good for this world. You are going to make that change.
It kind of takes luck out of the equation a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, it does.
Or maybe when that luck flies by the window, you're more likely to see it because your attention was focused in the right place.
I don't
Well,
believe in luck. I think everything happens for a reason.
so I got a chicken and egg question for you. Um, we like to say with business leaders, change is hard. Humans don't like change of any kind. It makes us
No.
nauseous.
Hmm.
Um, but you can make change happen if you have three elements present.
Yes.
One is sufficient pain.
Hmm.
The other is a significant vision.
Hmm.
And then a third is clarity about, what is my next step? And now I recently lost 20 pounds, and I'd like to tell you it's because I'm a great goal setter and I goal set it, envisioned it, and that's not at all what happened. I've had back pain all my life, and it was getting really bad. And my doctor told me to get in the water and start swimming. And
Right.
so that's what I did. And next thing you know, I lost 20 pounds and my back doesn't hurt anymore. But in this case, it wasn't a vision. I guess it was clarity about the first step and it was pain. And that was enough to overcome the change. But when you work with your clients in coaching, how do you help them? And what do you see more often? Do you see pain more often being the driving force than the vision, or could it be either?
I think a lot of it stemmed from pain. And it was people who overcame their pain and wanted to now help others because they figured out how to overcome specific traumas in their life, specific events in their life that had caused them all different types of pain, and from mental to physical. And they realized that there were certain things that they could do to help themselves. And then when they figured it out, they wanted to share it with others. Everybody's different, but a lot of people realize that if you personalize each coaching session with the person, you don't, and you use some of the techniques that you use that you think would apply for that person, then you could actually teach somebody to actually achieve and get better and achieve their goals. So if they want to be a leader, but they don't have enough of confidence, there are ways where you could use the things that you've learned in your life that built your confidence level up and apply it to them and see, according to their personality, what type of personality they are, which things would work the best with them. Because everybody has a different personality, and some people are statistical, some people are easier, and they just want to get better and they're willing to try things, and other people are very scared of trying new things because they've had failure in their life, or things didn't work out the way they did and they hold on to it. But then, as you know, you have to remind people that the past is the past. We can't change the past, and that we can't worry about something that in the future because we don't know if it's going to happen. So we really have to focus on the present, and then taking your pain points, being able to overcome them, learn from them, and then use them somehow in something that you're passionate about to help others in those same similar situations.
Thank you. I love your perspective. So much wisdom. There's maybe one other thing I'd like to touch on, and that is that now healthcare providers, they have to acquire patients and they have to retain patients.
Hmm.
But they hate the word sales.
Yeah.
They're allergic to sales. They don't do sales, but they do have to do client acquisition. And I understand, and this is something that I deal with all the time, even in my own company, this sort of uneasiness about sales.
Hmm.
But here's the way I look at it, Stacey. Sales is no different than good parenting, coaching, or counseling.
Right.
You're going to ask the questions that help the person self-identify, what's important to them and why, and then help
Right.
them move forward with the steps that are in their best self-interest.
Yes.
And in my experience, part of helping physicians get more comfortable with the patient acquisition process is to realize that that you're enabling this patient to get the care that they want and they need.
Yeah.
Yes, you're benefiting financially too. That's okay. You're providing value to those people.
Right.
So do you have any advice for folks that like they actually do in fact have to acquire patients? Sometimes it's out of pocket, elective kind of thing, but other in other cases it may be necessary, but they're trying to persuade the patient to go forward with their treatment plan.
Right.
Do you have any advice for physicians on how they can, get over their stereotypes about sales and persuade patients to accept treatment?
I think a lot of times the best way is to put some storytelling in it. If you can go back to your own personal life and you can actually relate to them in some way, you might not have the same story or the same condition, but I'm sure everybody's been through something in life. And if we can go back and we can relate to certain things and then, explain how certain things in our life helped us. There are many times where I had gone out of pocket into my own pocket, for things that I knew weren't covered because I knew that it would make me feel better. I knew that it would heal me. And, so I was willing to give it a try. You have to think about it. Is this the way you want to feel the rest of your life? Or would you like to try something that is, scientifically evident and that has a good response for most individuals, a positive response that it's going to work? And like for instance, if you're bone on bone and you can barely walk, and maybe the insurance will cover surgery, but then let's say there is another way, you can get help and treatment and you don't have to go through the surgery, would you want to try it? Or even if if you weren't covered by your insurance and they had a procedure that was available, would you want to go into your pocket and try it, or would you want to live in pain for the rest of your life, barely able to walk? You have to ask these questions. Or if your body is so out of whack that you can't even get out of bed or you can't move your arms, you have to think about, is this the way I want to feel the rest of our life? Nobody wants to be in pain. Nobody wants to have mental health issues and and suffer, because they can't get over certain things in their life. We have to realize what's important to live a healthy, happy, productive life or to go through each day that we live in misery, because most people sometimes will suffer. They'll think about the past and how they used to be, and they'll think about how they are in the present, but yet they are still hesitant about doing something about it. And you have to really, as a provider, you have to make them really realize that, is this how you want to feel? But you have to be personable. You can't be like a car salesperson. You have
Right.
to have to you have to be able to connect with that person. You have to be able to make that person trust you. You have to be able to have some type of connection where they feel that they can put their health and themselves in your hands and they feel comfortable that they're going to have something positive come out of this. And so once that is achieved, then you can take the next step with this person, and this person will most likely be more willing to move forward. So storytelling to me is the best way, because even if you had a relative that had a similar situation and they had a success story behind it, open it up and talk about the emotions, the pain points, and go over, this is what happened. And after they went through this, they were able to do this and they got their life back, and that makes that person think, wow, maybe I can go and play with my grandkids if I feel better. I'll be able to, do this and, maybe I'll be able to, do some of the things that I can't do now that I'm restricted of.
It makes me think about the example we give sometimes of, say, a patient or person wants to quit smoking.
Yeah.
And they go to two doctors. The first doctor says, okay, you want to quit smoking? You want the gum or the patch? I
Hmm.
got both. And then he goes to another doctor, and the doctor says, really? You want to quit smoking, huh? How long you been thinking about that? What got you started thinking about that? Is there anything you tried in the past? How did that work out? All right, well, take me forward 10 years. If you quit smoking, what is it? What do you look like in 10 years?
Right.
What do you look like if you don't? Well, what do you want to? I understand why you came to see me. What do you want to do?
Right.
And a good counselor would do that. A great doctor would do that, and a good salesperson should do the exact same thing.
100%.
You know, the first sale for an influencer, be it counselor, salesperson, or physician, is to believe in what they're saying.
Yes.
But the second one is for their patient to believe in their own vision of the future. And that's what the coach, the counselor, the salesperson should be able to hopefully bring out if they're focused on the person they're serving and not themselves.
Yes. 100%. Yeah, I feel like it has to be about the patient, not about the doctor, but about the patient, and you really, it's really devoting that time and making that patient feel, a certain way, to feel that trust, to feel that safeness, to feel that security, and to make them think, okay, just like you said, that was an excellent example to really make them think about, to make them look at themselves
And verbalize it.
and verbalize it. Yes.
That's right. Go on the witness stand, right? Because once that testimony is recorded, I can always refer back to it. If the
Hmm.
person, if they lose momentum, you can say, didn't you tell me this and that?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Well, Stacey, it's so great talking to you today. I know that we both have to get on with our day here.
Yes. And so before we go, can you tell
Yeah.
everybody about your services and what you provide?
Sure. Focal Point Business Coaching. We provide, or work with CEOs of services company, particularly healthcare, but not exclusively, to help them clarify their goals and achieve them. So it's not consulting. We don't tell people how to run their business, but we help them clarify what they want to achieve and step by step achieve it. Now, in parallel with that, I'm a sales enablement expert. So when my clients need help in revenue performance, I can help them with some consulting. But as you know, coaching is quite a bit different than consulting.
Yes.
You can find me at matthawk.focalpointcoaching.com. And look out for my next book coming out next year. The working title is From Technician to Visionary, A Practitioner's Guide to Scaling Success.
And can you tell them about your current book also?
My last book was Next Level Sales Coaching, published by Wiley. And this is really written for sales leaders on how to help their people be more successful.
I love it. And where can they find that book?
It's on Amazon, Next Level Sales Coaching.
I love it. I love it. Well, this has been wonderful, Matt. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope you'll be back at a later date and we could talk about more topics because we brushed over a lot of different things today, but I really would love to have you back on the show. You are an excellent coach and you're very compassionate in what you do. And I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you, Stacy. Likewise.
You have a great day.
You too.